Husband bought a house for his mom as a birthday gift, but then I found out that he had used the money from our daughter's college fund. And he told me and our daughter to stop leeching off of him when I confronted him, so I speak to my lawyer, and now I'm having the last laugh because even his mom wants nothing to do with him anymore. 3 weeks ago, my husband gifted his mother a house in the suburbs. It was pre-furnished, and since it was a pretty nice location, I assumed that it had probably cost him a lot. It came as a surprise to all of us when he made that announcement at the birthday party and handed her the keys. He hadn't told me about it or discussed it with me. And given the fact that it was a huge purchase, I was a bit put off, but I still smiled and clapped along. Later on, when I spoke to him about it, he told me that he had done the math and it was not going to affect our finances at all, so he didn't think it was important to mention it to me. That this wouldn't affect our finances since we are definitely not in the kind of tax bracket where we can just buy a house like that without batting an eye. He's a senior software engineer at an IT company and I run an office supplies business with my parents. We could call ourselves upper middle class, but not the kind of people who can just buy an expensive house and give it to somebody as a birthday gift. So, a few days later, I went digging and my first instinct was to check all the joint savings accounts that we have. We have one that serves as our retirement fund and another one that's for our daughter's future, her college fund, and I discovered that a huge amount of money was missing from that account. So, of course, I put 2 and 2 together and I realized that he must have used the money from our daughter's college fund to buy his mom a house, and I immediately confronted him about it. He didn't lie about it or anything when I asked him. He told me that he had indeed done that, but he wasn't sorry about it in the slightest. In fact, he got pretty defensive when I confronted him, trying to make it seem like he hadn't done anything wrong. I questioned him on that as well, because if he hadn't done anything wrong, he wouldn't have had a reason to hide it from me in the first place. But he had gone out of his way to hide things from me. He had taken my phone, probably when I was sleeping, turned off all notifications and alerts from the bank about that particular account, and then after the transaction, he had deleted all records of it that had been sent to me as well. That's why I hadn't been able to find out anything about it, because he made sure that I couldn't. So if he really had been so confident that he hadn't done anything wrong, then he wouldn't have done these things either, and he would have been more open about what he was doing. Even at the party, after he made his announcement, he had the opportunity to come clean to me, but he didn't. And instead, he reassured me that he had done the math and stuff, when in reality, he had basically just stolen money from our daughter that we had been putting aside for her future. I said all these things to him and I thought that I was being perfectly reasonable, but he lashed out at me when I confronted him about it and brought up all these things. He told me he earns way more than I do, so his contributions are naturally higher since we put aside 10% of our income every month for our daughter's future. And he told me that he has been doing enough for both of us already, so I have no right to make him feel bad about doing something for his mom for once, and that my daughter and I need to stop leeching off of him. That was incredibly insulting for me, because even though I do earn less than him, it's not like I do less work than him. Just because he earns more than me and has to spend more time at work, I make sure that I do all the household chores, all the cooking and stuff, and I think my contribution in our life is equal, nothing less than what he does. It's just that he can keep track of his contribution financially, but I can't keep track of the labor that I have put into our marriage alongside my professional work. Apart from that, I also found it very insulting that he had said that my daughter and I were leeching off of him, because as far as I'm concerned, he was just doing what any father does and looking out for his daughter's future. I don't think that counts as leeching off of somebody. I didn't like the things that he had said, and I didn't like the fact that he had lied to me, so we got into a huge fight that day and I ended up moving out. Since then, it's been almost 2 weeks and things haven't gotten any better. We are both in our 40s and our daughter is going to turn 16 in a few months. We have been together for the past 20 years, married for 18, so it's not like we haven't had fights before. But this is a huge deal and it's come out of almost nowhere. I'm obviously very disappointed in his behavior, and since he hadn't bothered to reach out to me after I moved out, I decided to speak to a lawyer a couple of days ago because a significant amount of time has passed since I moved out, and because he showed no initiative. I thought that he clearly doesn't care enough about our marriage to put in an effort to even apologize. And at this point, it's too late to turn around and pretend that everything's still fine somehow. So 3 days ago, I finalized the lawyer that I was going to go ahead with, had him draw up divorce papers, and filed for divorce yesterday. My parents and my daughter are trying to be as supportive as they can, and I'm really grateful for that, but I had a moment of weakness yesterday after I came back home. I just ended up breaking down into tears, and I was so upset and angry that I ended up calling my mother-in-law and telling her everything about the house that she had been gifted by her son. I was sobbing throughout the conversation. She kept trying to comfort me and stuff, but in the end, I just told her that 20 years of our relationship had just gone down the drain because of that house. It wasn't like I was blaming her or anything. I knew that she didn't know anything about the truth, but I just wanted her to know, so I told her everything and then I hung up. And after that, my husband finally called me up this morning, and he was the one crying this time. He told me that he thought that I would eventually come back home. He had no idea that I had already filed for divorce, and he found out about it only last night after his mother called him up a couple of minutes after I hung up on her. She told him everything about how devastated I had sounded and how she blamed him for everything that had gone wrong. Apparently, his mother had told him that she was very disappointed in him and that she was going to sell the house and return the money to me, because it rightfully belongs to my daughter and not her. And she had also told him that if he doesn't talk to me, apologize and make things right with me and his daughter, then she's not going to talk to him either. Until I come back home, she's going to stay no contact with him, and that's going to be his punishment for the way he screwed up. And now he's begging me to come back, telling me that he's screwed up and he knows it, that he's really sorry and he can't afford to lose the three most important people in his life all in one go. But I don't feel like going back to him right now. I feel like even though I'm very upset about the divorce, I can't imagine anything worse. I'm still willing to go through with it because I can't forget how insulted and small he made me feel. I can tolerate petty fights and stuff, but this was just plain disrespectful. And even though it's going to hurt me a lot, I don't think it's a good idea for me to cancel the divorce. So Ida for not wanting to go back to my husband at this point? Update 1. Okay, so I met my husband and spoke to him about the situation right now because I don't think that we're going to get anywhere without a proper discussion first. It's been 2 days since I posted my update, and earlier in the evening today, I met him at a nearby coffee shop. I chose a public place because that way at least all the drama would be under control on both our parts, because neither of us are the kind of people who would want to create a scene in public. Anyway, we met and he looked very upset, and the first thing he said as soon as we sat down was that he was extremely sorry about everything, that he had taken things way too far, and that he regrets whatever he has done. He told me that he's ready to do anything that it takes to get me back and that he didn't mean anything that he said. It was all just said in the heat of the moment, and he really wanted to reach out to me, but his ego got in the way. He told me that he had been waiting for me to call him. He had no idea I was so upset that I was actually considering divorce, and if he knew, he wouldn't have let the situation get so bad in the first place. I'm sure he thought that he was saying all the right things, but in my opinion, that just made the situation much worse because, to me, it sounded like he was ready to let me continue feeling upset about everything that had happened, since he believed that it was inevitable that at some point I would swallow my pride and come back. For him, it was actually unthinkable that I would leave him over anything, and that's why he was so overconfident that he didn't even bother contacting me, even though he had felt bad according to what he said. The fact that it actually took him news of me filing for divorce from him to acknowledge and admit that what he had done was not right, and that was enough for me to realize that I was doing the right thing by getting this divorce. And I told him that I understood he was sorry right now, but I've been hurting for 2 weeks and he couldn't bring himself to care about that. It took him so much to realize that he wanted me back, and after 20 years of being together, if this is how little I mean to him, then I'm not sure I want to be with him anymore. I explained to him that I just thought that our marriage, the life that we had built together, would probably mean more to him and not so little that he would be willing to jeopardize all that over something like this. He himself had acknowledged the fact that after I left, he did feel bad about whatever he had said. It wouldn't have taken much of an effort for him to apologize, and maybe if he had acted fast, I would have come back to him, and we could have tried to sort the situation out. But he let it fester, and he let 2 weeks pass, believing that I would be the one to come back because I always do, and maybe part of that is my fault that I have let him think that way, because even in our previous fights, even the bigger ones, I would always apologize first because it was like torture staying away from him and not talking to him, so I would always apologize first. It had become like a habit, but this time, since I chose to stick to my guns, he showed me how little I mean to him. And maybe I could tolerate the fact that I don't mean as much to him as he does to me, but I cannot tolerate, and neither can I forgive, the fact that he didn't even contact our daughter in these past 2 weeks. It took him a threat of never being contacted again by either me or his daughter or even his mother for him to come to his senses. And if things have to get so extreme for him to realize that what he's doing is not right, then maybe it's time that we re-evaluated our relationship and where it stands. I told him that I'm in my 40s and I've already spent the past 20 years of my life with him, but if that doesn't make him value me, then I don't think anything else will. And right now, I think the best course of action for me at least would be to get a divorce. I put it all as nicely as I could because I really didn't want to waste my energy getting angry and things, but even then he got very defensive. He told me that this was just one fight and I couldn't just end our marriage over one disagreement, and if I did, maybe I was the one who didn't value what we had as much as I said I did. He was clearly trying to twist my words and manipulate me into staying, but I was really emotionally exhausted, so I told him that he was right. At the end of the day, I had made up my mind about wanting a divorce, and I had just met him for the sake of closure this last time. I didn't want to let things end on a bitter note after spending so many years together, so I had tried to be as nice about it as possible, and that's why I had agreed to meet him. But, clearly, Since he and I had very different opinions on whether this is something worth getting divorced over or not, my point still stands. I told him that since we are clearly very different people, we shouldn't waste more time with each other than we already have now. I knew that within a few days he would be served, and I told him that I would really appreciate it if he just signed the papers and got this over with. After that, I was about to get up and leave, but he started telling me not to go. And I could see that he was about to cry, so I told him I really didn't want any sort of emotional scene here in the coffee shop. By then, I was quite exhausted, and I told him I tried my best to explain to him why I couldn't do this anymore, and he clearly didn't understand. So I didn't want to waste more of my time trying to explain things to him that he had no interest in even trying to comprehend. I knew that he would just keep getting defensive, and I didn't want to deal with that anymore, so I just walked out. After I came back home, he tried to call me a couple of times, and he tried to text me and tell me to call me back as well, but I muted him later. I told my parents and my daughter everything that had happened, and they comforted me since I was also pretty upset. I'm especially grateful that my daughter is taking this so well and is supporting me right now. She's been very mature about the whole thing, and I can't believe that she's just a teenager. But of course, I don't want her to feel like I'm going to antagonize her father, so I did tell her that she should keep in touch with him and forgive him if he reaches out to her. To my surprise though, she told me that he hadn't texted or called her even once ever since we left. That was a bit of a shock for me because I thought that since he had contacted me, he might have contacted her as well. I hadn't bothered to check with her because I've been kind of busy with my own thing. So today, when I found out that he had only reached out to me but hadn't even bothered to speak to our daughter, I found it very strange. I just can't explain his behavior. So when my daughter told me that now, even if he does reach out to her, she's not going to respond to him, at least not anytime soon, I couldn't say anything to her because honestly, I probably would behave the same way in her place if my dad did something like that. Anyway, that's what's going on right now, and I just feel very confused about him. Update 2. So, hey, it's been a week since my previous post here, and this morning I finally heard back from my husband, and he responded to the petition with a few minor modifications that I don't really mind. In the past week, he had tried to get through to me several times initially, but when he noticed that I wasn't responding, he stopped trying to contact me. Then he finally contacted our daughter, but it wasn't to speak to her or ask how she was doing. He didn't even apologize to her. He just sent her a text saying that he wanted to talk to me, and he was pretty sure that I had muted him or something because I was not responding. So she needed to pick up his call and put me on. My daughter didn't respond to that. She blocked him, and even though she had been keeping it all to herself for the past few weeks after that incident, she finally ended up coming to me and completely breaking down. She's always had a fairly normal relationship with her father, even though she's always been closer to me, so I can't understand what has come over that guy, that he's being so insensitive towards her. She was already pretty hurt about the comments he made, about us leeching off of him, and then he hadn't even bothered to contact her for 3 weeks. When he finally did, it wasn't even to talk to her, it was to talk to me. At some point, she was bound to break down, and I'm glad that she has finally allowed herself to cry because it's a better alternative to bottling it up. That was almost 3 days ago, and after that, he did not try to contact either me or her. And today, I received the revised petition since we don't have to negotiate any further. The divorce is going to be finalized in 3 months after the waiting period is over, and we're going to be officially done with each other. It feels weird to even think about it, but it's happening. During and after the divorce, I'm going to continue living with my parents. But as for my daughter, since she's still a minor, we have allowed her to decide where she wants to stay. She has made it very clear to me that she wants to stay with me, but I don't want any trouble with her dad or to make it seem like I'm turning her against him, so she has agreed to spend the weekends with him at least. I haven't discussed this arrangement with him yet, but if he wants a relationship with his daughter at all, this is what he's going to have to agree to because after whatever has happened, I don't think that our daughter's going to spend any more time with him than the weekends. The strange thing is he hasn't even asked about her, and I know that she's trying to make it look like she doesn't care, like most teenagers usually do. But I know that deep down she's hurt, and I can't imagine how he doesn't even care knowing that he's hurting our only daughter right now. Anyway, as a mom, it's my duty to make sure that I do what is best for my daughter. So I'm going to speak to him about this arrangement, the whole custody thing and stuff, and I'm going to have papers drawn up so we can go through it legally. She's 16, so it's not like we get to decide for her. She has a say in what she wants, and she's already told me what she wants, so that's what I'm going to go ahead with. Apart from her, the one other person who's being affected by all this is my mother-in-law, since she has also been texting me regularly, checking up on both of us, and has even visited a few times. She's in the process of selling the house right now, and as soon as that's done, she will be returning all the money to me, and I'm really grateful to her for that because strictly speaking, she didn't need to do that. She's not the one who went out of her way to take money out of our daughter's college fund. That was my husband. She could have just chosen to live in blissful ignorance and keep that house. but she decided to do the decent thing, and the way she's been so supportive of us. I'm really glad that I have a mother-in-law like her. She didn't even antagonize me for my decision to get a divorce from her son. And, in fact, she told me that if that's what I wanted to go ahead with, then I must have thought about it at length. And she told me that she knows that it can't be easy, but I've decided to go through with it, and she wishes me luck. I mean, I can't imagine any other mother-in-law behaving like that in her place, but she was very dignified about the whole thing, and I really respect that. I haven't asked her whether she's been in touch with my husband or not, since I do remember that my husband had called me up and told me that given the divorce, his mother had decided not to speak to him unless and until I come back to him. I have no idea if she's sticking to that or not, and I don't want to intrude either, so I haven't asked her about it. But personally, I don't mind if she keeps in touch with him because after all, Pete is her only son and she lost her husband a few years back, so I know it's probably not easy for her to get through life without speaking to her son. Plus, it's her choice, so I don't mind if she chooses to keep in touch with him, and for his own good, I really hope that she does because he was right. It would really shatter me to lose all the important people in my life in one go. And even though I'm very upset with him and his behavior, I can't deny the fact that I still have a soft spot for him. And I think that's only natural after so many years of being together. So, I genuinely and truly hope that he's able to get his act together, and if not me, at least he will be able to get his mom and daughter back on talking terms with him. Update 3. So, it's been a couple of days since my last update, and like I had said, I decided to reach out to my husband and discuss the living arrangement for our daughter. I had waited for a bit for him to bring it up with me, but since he hadn't, I went ahead and brought it up myself. He seemed excited when I called him, but his enthusiasm went away when he realized that I was just calling to discuss this thing. When I told him that our daughter wanted to spend the week with me and was fine with visiting him on the weekends, he told me that worked for him as well and gave me the green light to go ahead and prepare the paperwork with my lawyer. Then, as an afterthought, he told me that because of his whole emotional situation with me, he had been neglecting the relationship with his daughter, and it hadn't even hit him until now when I told him that she only wanted to spend the weekends with him. And he made a request. He told me that if it was possible for me, he wanted me to get our daughter to unblock him so he would be able to contact her and apologize to her properly, something he hadn't done until now because he was so busy with his own problems. I was glad that at least even if it was so late he was still going to try and make things right with her. So I told him that I would do that, and after I hung up, I did speak to my daughter about it. I didn't try to pressure her or anything. I just told her whatever her father had said and left it up to her whether she wanted to speak to him or not, because I think at this stage it's better for her to make her own decisions, especially regarding her father. Clearly, the situation is very complicated right now and I don't want to push her into anything. So she can take her own time, decide when or even if she wants to forgive him or not, and go ahead with what she wants. Personally, I think that's the best way to deal with the situation. Anyway, that's done now, and I think this was pretty much the last interaction that I had to have with my soon-to-be ex-husband, and after this, there's nothing more to be said or done. Update 4. Hey, so a couple of weeks ago, the divorce finally came through, and as of today, I'm single again. That doesn't mean I'm gonna go out and start dating again. So I'm gonna take my time and process everything first because I'm still trying to cope with everything that has happened. I'm still staying with my parents, and I think I'll be staying with them for the foreseeable future, which is good for the business because now we're all under one roof. My mother-in-law and I are still in touch. She checks up on us sometimes, and I know that she and her granddaughter meet quite often, and I'm really happy that they're keeping up a healthy relationship. As for my ex-husband and I, we haven't spoken since the divorce was finalized, and I intend on keeping it that way. My daughter has started visiting him every alternate weekend, and apparently, he's been very apologetic about the whole thing. He's trying to make it up to her, and slowly but surely, she's allowing him to apologize and be there for her as a father. Maybe someday soon, they will be back to normal. Who knows? That's what I wish for, in spite of everything, because that's what will be good for our daughter, and at the end of the day, that's what's most important to me, doing what's best for our daughter. I've already received the money back from the sale of the house from my mother-in-law, and I've put it back into the funds which are in my care now because I think my ex and I realized that I should be responsible for that. So I guess things are more or less stable now, and it's a good thing, I suppose, and I really hope the future is better.